These must be delivered immediately.
It's over, Elena. Your deception has been revealed.
No, please. I beg you.
What was that for? Look at this.
It's beautiful.
For the vast majority of men, a home is simply a physical location defined by coordinates and property taxes, a collection of bricks, drywall, and mortgage payments, where they sleep and eat between shifts of labor. But for Caleb Thorne, his home was not just a residence, it was a testament to 20 years of unrelenting discipline, a $2.4 million glass and steel sanctuary perched on the precarious slopes of the British properties in West Vancouver, overlooking the gray, churning waters of the Burrard Inlet. Caleb was the regional director for Apex Logistics Solutions, a high-pressure role that placed him at the helm of a $500 million global shipping empire, where a single delayed container could cost the firm hundreds of thousands of dollars. And his mind did not work like other men's minds, because where others saw chaos and unpredictability, Caleb saw patterns and supply chain inefficiencies waiting to be corrected. He earned a base salary of $230,000 a year, supplemented by a performance bonus that consistently hovered around the $45,000 mark, depending on the fiscal quarter's yield. And he was a man who viewed his life through the lens of a balance sheet, weighing assets against liabilities with a cold, mathematical precision. He drove a 2022 Porsche Cayenne in Meteor Gray, a vehicle chosen not for its flash or social signaling, but for its engineering reliability and its ability to handle the wet, winding roads of the Pacific Northwest without faltering. He was a machine of absolute routine who woke up at 5 a.m. sharp without an alarm, drank exactly 16 ounces of water to rehydrate his system, ran 5 kilometers on his treadmill while listening to the Bloomberg Asian Market Report, and was seated at his triple-monitor desk by 7:30 a.m. to manage the intricate dance of international freight. His wife, Elena, was the aesthetic counterweight to his rigid functionalism. She was the 34-year-old curator for the Vancity Modern Art Gallery, a woman whose chaotic, vibrant, and emotional nature was maintained entirely by Caleb's financial foundation, including the lease on her white Audi Q5, the membership fees for the private clubs she frequented, and the utility bills that averaged $600 a month in the winter to heat the massive glass house. It was Friday, August 18th, a date circled in red on Caleb's digital calendar not because of a board meeting, but because it was the 3rd anniversary of Elena's promotion to gallery director, and because for weeks she had been making passive-aggressive complaints that he was married to his spreadsheets and had forgotten how to be a romantic partner. Caleb decided to break his ironclad routine to prove her wrong, a decision that would ultimately dismantle the architecture of his entire existence. At 2:15 p.m., Caleb shut down his workstation at the Apex Logistics Tower, telling his executive assistant, Martha, that he was leaving early for a personal matter, something he hadn't done in 4 years, and took the elevator down to the parking garage, his mind already calculating the most efficient route to minimize traffic on the Lionsgate Bridge. He stopped at Granville Island Florist, widely regarded as the most expensive and exclusive florist in the city, where he didn't just grab a pre-made arrangement from the cooler, but spent 20 minutes hand-selecting a custom bouquet of heavy, fragrant white peonies and imported orchids, wrapping them in matte black paper tied with a silk ribbon. The cost was precisely $280.45, a sum that might have been a week's grocery budget for some, but for Caleb, it was an investment in domestic stability, a necessary expenditure to maintain the marriage asset. He drove toward West Vancouver with a rare sense of anticipation, the gray Porsche humming quietly on the wet asphalt, imagining the look of genuine surprise on Elena's face and the quiet, intimate evening they would share over a bottle of wine. He pulled into the steep, heated driveway of his home at 3:10 p.m., the house standing silent and majestic against the backdrop of heavy gray clouds, and turned off the ignition, taking a moment to appreciate the silence of the neighborhood, broken only by the distant cry of a seagull. He walked up the stone steps, the heavy bouquet in his left arm, his keys in his right hand, ready to unlock the door. But as he reached for the handle, he stopped cold. The main door, A massive slab of solid mahogany that had cost $8,000 to install and weighed nearly 200 pounds was not fully closed. It was ajar by just a fraction, revealing a vertical strip of darkness perhaps 2 inches wide between the wood and the frame. Caleb froze, his mind immediately cycling through potential scenarios of a security breach or a burglary, but glancing at the ADT pulse panel inside the foyer through the glass side panel, he saw it was dark, meaning the alarm hadn't been triggered. A burglar wouldn't leave the door open. They would close it to buy time or conceal their presence. A realization washed over him. Elena must be home early, perhaps laden with groceries or art supplies, and in her haste to get out of the rain, she had simply failed to latch the heavy door properly. He pushed the door open with his fingertips, the hinges moving silently thanks to his meticulous maintenance, and stepped into the foyer, where his $900 Versace loafers made no sound on the polished Italian marble floor. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. The air felt different, charged with a static tension that raised the hair on his arms. As he moved past the grand staircase toward the living area, his senses picked up something wrong. It wasn't the smell of Elena's usual vanilla candles or the lingering aroma of coffee, but a sharp, musky cologne that wasn't his. It was Santal 33, a trendy, overpowering scent that hung in the air like a fog, distinct and alien in his sanctuary. Caleb stopped breathing, his heart rate, usually a resting 58 beats per minute, spiking to 90 as he moved toward the corridor that led to Elena's private home office, a room she guarded jealously, claiming she needed absolute privacy for her curatorial calls. The door to the office was half open, and then he heard the voice. It was Elena, but not the Elena who spoke to him about tax returns or dinner plans. This voice was slurred, relaxed, and dripping with a cruel, mocking amusement that he had never heard before in their 5 years of marriage. "He's going to Tokyo next week," Elena was saying, her voice carrying the unmistakable lilt of expensive Chardonnay, even though it was only 3 p.m. in the afternoon. 7 whole days. God, I've been counting the minutes. We can finally use the cabin without him asking about the mileage log, or we can just stay here and order in every night. Caleb just deposited his quarterly bonus check this morning, a full $45,000. Caleb pressed his back against the cool plaster of the hallway wall, clutching the flowers so tightly the stems began to snap in his grip, his entire body rigid as a man's voice answered, deep, younger, and sickeningly familiar. "Are you sure he won't notice the transfer?" the man asked, his tone a mix of arrogance and hesitation. "I mean, the guy tracks the cost of coffee beans, Elena. He's obsessed." It was Liam. Liam was a 28-year-old mixed-media abstract artist, a title that Caleb privately translated to unemployed and pretentious, to whom Caleb had given a $5,000 grant 2 months ago at Elena's request to jumpstart his career. Caleb had shaken Liam's hand in this very hallway, had bought him dinner, and had listened to him talk about his artistic vision, never realizing that the vision included sleeping with his wife. "Caleb?" Elena laughed, a sound that shattered Caleb's world more effectively than a sledgehammer, piercing his chest like a cold blade. Oh, please. He's so lost in his spreadsheets, logistics, and shipping containers, he doesn't even notice when I buy new clothes or what color my hair is. He looks through me, Liam. He doesn't see me. He's boring. He's safe. He is just an ATM machine that breathes. I'm just waiting for March. Once his pension fund and the company stock options fully vest, I'll file for irreconcilable differences. We'll split everything down the middle. I'll take the lump sum and we can open your studio in Berlin like we talked about. Caleb stood there in the shadows, the betrayal washing over him not just as emotional pain, but as a realization of a massive strategic failure. She wasn't just cheating on him physically. She was embezzling his future, mocking his hard work, and treating his discipline, the very thing that kept a roof over her head, as a joke. In that moment, a lesser man would have kicked open the door, screamed, thrown the flowers, thrown punches, and created a scene of passion that would have ended with the police arriving and his dignity in tatters. But Caleb Thorne was not a lesser man. He was a regional director of logistics, and his job was to manage crises, to root around blockages, and to deliver results regardless of the obstacles. He made a choice that defied every instinct of the human heart, but aligned perfectly with the logic of a master strategist. He looked at the 280 bouquet of peonies in his hand, looked at the half-open door where his wife was planning his financial ruin, and then he turned around. He walked backward, step by silent step, retracing his path through the foyer, reaching the heavy mahogany door and pulling it gently until it was exactly as ajar as he had found it. A 2-inch gap of darkness. He walked to his Porsche, opened the door, slid into the leather seat, and started the engine, backing out of the driveway without revving the engine. He drove 3 miles down the road to a scenic lookout point at Lighthouse Park, got out of the car into the light drizzle, walked to a public trash bin, and dropped the exquisite bouquet of white peonies into the garbage right on top of a discarded Starbucks cup and a grease-stained pizza box. It was a write-off, a sunk cost that had to be liquidated to protect the primary asset. He got back in his car and sat there for 45 minutes, watching the rain blur the windshield, practicing the box breathing technique he used during high-stakes contract negotiations. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, until his heart rate returned to a steady 65 beats per minute. He checked his watch. It was now 6:30 p.m., his usual arrival time. He drove home, parked the car, and walked through the front door as if he were arriving for the first time that day. The house was silent now, the smell of Santal 33 masked by the scent of lavender air freshener. Elena was sitting on the beige sectional sofa, her legs curled under her, reading a copy of Art Forum, looking up with the smile of an angel. "Hi, honey," she said. "You're home right on time." Caleb walked over, leaned down, and kissed her on the cheek, tasting the faint chemical residue of mouthwash she had used to scrub away the wine and the truth. "Happy anniversary, Elena," Caleb said, his voice steady, betraying zero tremors. "Oh." She put a hand to her chest, feigning surprise. "Is that today? I've been so busy with the gallery catalog I completely forgot. You're so sweet to remember." That night, as Caleb lay in bed next to the woman who was plotting to strip him of his life's work, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, he didn't sleep. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, mapping out the next 6 months of his life with the cold detachment of a general planning a siege. She wanted to wait until March. Fine, he would wait until March too, but when March arrived, the landscape would look very different than she imagined, because Operation Audit had officially begun. The next morning, Caleb woke up at 5 a.m. as usual, but instead of running on the treadmill, he went to his private study, locked the door, and turned on his secure server. He knew that in logistics, information was the most valuable commodity. You cannot fix a supply chain if you don't know where the leaks are. He needed access to her digital footprint. Elena was careful with her phone, keeping it face down and password protected, but she was lazy with her backups, sharing a cloud account with the house iPad for photo syncing. Caleb logged into the main iCloud account using his administrator credentials, authorized a new device, an old iPhone 8 he kept in his safe for international travel, and watched as the phone began to populate with her data: photos, contacts, notes, and most importantly, messages. It took 20 minutes for the green loading bar to fill up, and when it did, he opened the message thread with L. It was a catalog of depravity, not just a record of sexual infidelity, but a detailed roadmap of financial exploitation. He read messages dated August 10th, where Elena complained about him asking about the electric bill, while simultaneously transferring a consulting fee to Liam for his studio rent. He read messages from August 12th, where she bragged about buying Liam boots on their joint Visa card and telling Caleb it was for a gallery opening outfit. Caleb screenshotted every single message, saving them to an encrypted external hard drive, building a dossier that would serve as his weapon when the time was right. But screenshots were not enough. He needed hard numbers, irrefutable proof that would stand up in a court of law and bypass the standard no-fault divorce proceedings. Caleb contacted an old associate from his university days, a man named Jameson, who now ran a boutique forensic accounting firm in downtown Vancouver. A man who charged $400 an hour, but was known for being discreet and lethal. "I need a full audit," Caleb told him over a secure line from his office later that morning. "Joint accounts, credit cards, my investment portfolio. I need to know where every cent has gone in the last 24 months, and I need it to stand up in civil court." Jameson asked if it was a standard divorce, and Caleb corrected him with a voice cold as ice. "Fraud. This isn't just a breakup, Jameson. This is embezzlement. She is siphoning marital assets to fund a third party." While Jameson began crunching the numbers, Caleb had to perform the hardest acting role of his life, being the boring husband. He had to come home every night, eat dinner across from the woman who called him an ATM machine, and ask her about her day with genuine interest. "How is the gallery?" he would ask. "Stressful," she would sigh, pouring herself a second glass of wine. "We have this new artist, Liam. He's brilliant, but so underfunded. I'm trying to find ways to support his vision." "That's noble of you," Caleb would say, cutting his steak with precise strokes. "Art is important." He watched her suppress a smile, thinking she was playing him, not realizing he was handing her the rope to hang herself. When she asked if they could sponsor Liam with a micro-grant of $2,000 for new canvases, Caleb agreed, telling her to write the check and put it under charitable donations for tax purposes, knowing that every check she wrote was another piece of evidence for the forensic report. He was feeding the beast, letting her confidence grow, letting her believe that her plan to wait until March was working perfectly, all while he prepared the trap that would snap shut on her entire world. 3 weeks passed in a suffocating haze of normalcy as Caleb executed the next phase of his plan, a phase he privately referred to as the Tokyo Gambit, designed to test the limits of Elena's greed and secure the final pieces of evidence needed to destroy her defense. Over a dinner of grilled salmon and asparagus, Caleb dropped the bait with the casual indifference of a man discussing the weather, announcing that he had to finalize the schedule for a trip to Tokyo on October 12th for a massive merger with a Japanese shipping conglomerate. A deal that would require him to be gone for 10 days and leave the house entirely to her. He watched her eyes light up, not with the affection of a wife who would miss her husband, but with the calculation of a predator spotting an unguarded gate. And to seal the deal, Caleb added a specific financial detail. If this merger went through, the March payout from his stock options would be double what they initially expected, a figure pushing $500,000. "Double?" Elena asked, her voice trembling slightly as she squeezed his hand across the table. "You have to go then, Caleb. For us. Think of what we could do with that security." Under the table, Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket with a cloned notification from her device. She was already texting Liam. "He's going. OCT 12 to 22. 10 days. The house is ours. He says the March payout is going to be double. We hit the jackpot, baby." Caleb smiled at his wife, told her he would book the ticket that night, and finished his wine, feeling a cold satisfaction knowing that he wasn't just giving her enough rope to hang herself. He was building the gallows, tying the knot, and oiling the trapdoor, all while she thanked him for the privilege. October 12th arrived with the crisp chill of autumn, the maple trees in the driveway turning a bloody red, and Caleb went through the elaborate theater of packing his Rimowa suitcases, checking his passport, and kissing Elena goodbye at the door before getting into an Uber. However, he did not direct the driver to Vancouver International Airport. Instead, he gave the address for the Pan Pacific Hotel in downtown Vancouver, where he checked into the Pacific Suite, room 1402, a luxury room overlooking the harbor that cost $800 a night, a necessary expense for the command center he was about to establish. He set up 2 high-performance laptops and a secure satellite phone on the dining table, linking one monitor directly to the Control 4 smart home system of his West Vancouver residence, granting him high-definition video and audio access to every room in his house except the bathrooms. For the first 2 days, he watched as Elena enjoyed the solitude, buying $3,000 worth of clothes on their joint Amex card, But on the third day, Liam arrived in his beaten-up Honda Civic, parking in Caleb's spot in the heated driveway with a sense of entitlement that made Caleb's jaw tighten. From his hotel room, Caleb watched the feed as the two of them embraced in the foyer, watched as Liam walked into the living room and poured himself a glass of Caleb's Macallan, 18, a $500 bottle, straight from the decanter without asking, and listened as Liam kicked Caleb's favorite leather armchair, complaining that the furniture was too corporate and suggesting they burn it during the renovation. They discussed turning Caleb's home office into Liam's studio because the north-facing light was perfect for his process, creating a fantasy future built entirely on the liquidation of Caleb's life's work. It was the ultimate insult, a cannibalization of his existence, but Caleb simply sat in the hotel suite, sipping bottled water, waiting for Friday night. The climax of the operation was scheduled for Friday evening, when Elena had planned a private art showcase at the house, inviting 50 of Vancouver's social elite, collectors, critics, and wealthy socialites, under the pretense of unveiling Liam's new collection, though in reality it was a party funded by Caleb's credit cards to launch the career of the man sleeping with his wife. By 9 p.m., the security cameras showed the house packed with people in black ties and cocktail dresses, champagne flowing freely, and a string quartet playing in the corner, while Liam held court in the center of the living room wearing a tuxedo that Caleb suspected was bought with the micro-grant he had signed off on. Caleb picked up his phone and dialed the number for Secure Logics, a high-end courier service specializing in sensitive legal deliveries, confirming that the rider was 5 minutes away before turning his attention to the laptop controlling the smart home. At 9:45 p.m., just as Elena was tapping a spoon against a champagne glass to make a toast, her face flushed with excitement and alcohol, Caleb initiated the sequence. "Tonight is about vision," Elena shouted to the room. "I want to toast to the most talented man I know, Liam, whose honest work you see around you." As the word honest left her lips, Caleb pressed the enter key. Instantly, the music cut out. The lights in the house dimmed to a near blackout, causing the guests to gasp. And then the massive 85-inch television screen mounted above the fireplace flickered to life, mirroring Caleb's laptop screen with blinding brightness. The guests fell silent, assuming this was part of the avant-garde art performance, but the screen did not show abstract art. It displayed a high-contrast spreadsheet titled, "The Audit," a financial retrospective. The room watched in stunned silence as the screen cycled through line items. Aug 12, payee, Liam Corbett. Amount, $3,000. Source, joint savings. Memo, art supplies, followed immediately by Sept 4. Payee, the Fairmont Whistler. Amount, $1,800. Guest names, Elena Thorne and Liam Corbett. A murmur of confusion and shock rippled through the crowd as Elena froze, her glass tilting dangerously. But the presentation was relentless. The screen changed to show GPS tracking maps placing Liam and Elena at Liam's apartment during hours she claimed to be working, and finally the coup de grace, screenshots of their text messages blown up to 4K resolution. The text, "He is just an ATM machine that breathes," hovered on the screen for 10 seconds, searing itself into the retinas of 50 witnesses, followed by Liam's reply asking to use Caleb's bonus for camera lenses. The silence in the room was absolute, a vacuum where reputations went to die as the elite of Vancouver stared at the raw, naked ugliness of Elena's soul. She screamed for someone to turn it off, claiming it was a hack, but before she could find the power cord, the doorbell rang like a gunshot. A uniformed courier walked through the parted crowd, approached the trembling woman in the red dress, and handed her a thick yellow envelope, saying the 3 words that ended her life as she knew it. "You've been served." She collapsed onto the floor as she realized the envelope contained a writ of divorce and a civil lawsuit for fraud, embezzlement, and civil conspiracy, while Caleb, miles away in his hotel room, quietly closed his laptop. The show finally over. The aftermath was a masterclass in scorched-earth logistics because Caleb had chosen to bypass a quiet settlement in favor of total destruction. In the world of high-net-worth divorces, the forensic report Jameson had compiled was bulletproof, proving dissipation of marital assets, a serious offense in Canadian law that stripped Elena of any leverage she might have had. The judge was merciless, especially after Caleb's lawyer presented the text messages mocking the provider of her lifestyle. The court ruled that Elena was entitled to zero alimony and upheld the pre-nuptial agreement in its entirety due to her breach of the fidelity and good faith clauses. Furthermore, she was held legally liable for the $82,000 she had siphoned from their accounts and ordered to pay restitution, forcing her to declare bankruptcy as she had no liquid assets. The art community, having seen the evidence of her fraud broadcast on a giant screen, blacklisted her immediately, and she was fired from the gallery the morning after the party. She was evicted from the West Vancouver home, which Caleb promptly put on the market because it smelled of betrayal, selling it for $2.6 million and keeping every cent of the equity. As for Liam, the lawsuit named him as a co-conspirator. Without Caleb's money, his artistic vision collapsed. His BMW Z4 was repossessed, and the moment the credit card stopped working, he ghosted Elena, moving back into his parents' basement and proving that his loyalty was tied exclusively to the currency, not the person. Elena, once the queen of the social scene, ended up working the front desk at a budget rental car agency in Surrey, an hour away from the life she had tried to steal. 6 months later, in March, the month Elena had been waiting for to file her divorce, Caleb Thorne sat in the Cathay Pacific first-class lounge at YVR Airport, wearing a new bespoke suit and looking years younger. The stress lines around his eyes smoothed away by the peace of resolution. A notification popped up on his phone from his banking app. Deposit received. Apex Logistics. Stock option. Vesting. Amount. $450,000. Seus. He smiled, tapping the screen to transfer the entire amount to a secured offshore investment account in the Cayman Islands, safe from any claim. He picked up his glass of Macallan 25, swirled the amber liquid, and looked out at the rainy tarmac, realizing that he was finally going to Tokyo for real this time, not for work, but for a 6-month sabbatical to ski in Niseko and disappear into the neon lights of Shinjuku. His mind drifted back to that Friday afternoon 6 months ago, to the scenic lookout point at Lighthouse Park, and he realized that throwing those $280 white peonies into the trash was the best investment he had ever made. That small loss had triggered the audit that saved his millions and secured his future. He took a sip of the whiskey, feeling the burn settle warmly in his chest, understanding finally that in the logistics of life, betrayal is just a variable, and if you react with strategy rather than emotion, you can engineer a landing that leaves you standing tall while the world burns down around you.